My name is Nick Cosentino, and I'm a Principal Software Engineering Manager at Microsoft. In this video interview, I was joined by Amichai Mantinband, who is not only a former Microsoft engineer, but also a fellow Dome Train course author. Now, Amichai also has a YouTube channel and creates content online that's very informative, so I do highly recommend you go check him out. But this conversation was awesome. We got to hear about Amichai's career journey and how we got to see how computer science truly fit like a glove for him. And we got to go into some conversations about AI and different ways that we approach software development. Amichai and I have not spent a lot of time ahead of time talking about these things, so it was really interesting to see that we had a lot of alignment on these different topics. I think there's a lot of valuable information that you can take away from this conversation, so just a quick reminder that if you enjoy these types of things, leave a comment below to let me know, and sit back, enjoy, and I'll see you next time. You've been creating content for a while, but how did you get to where you're at today? And I always love asking, what's the earliest point in your life you were like, yeah, software, that's going to be the thing that I'm doing when I grow up someday.
Right. So I actually have an interesting story. So
Okay.
I had no idea that I'm going to be coding for a living.
Okay.
Literally until the first line of code I wrote when studying computer science, in the degree. So
you went to go for a degree and didn't even know you're like a computer science degree, and you were like, I don't even know if I like this stuff.
So I was studying nutrition. So take a few steps back. So I was never sort of like a geek. Today I understand that I always was, but then I was like, I don't know, cooler, I guess.
Sure.
And I wanted to do things like therapy and work with dogs, perhaps also like being a dog trainer, and do like nutrition, like one-on-ones, and help people build their like diet plan and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I started my degree in nutrition, and throughout the degree, I understood that this isn't I'm not very enthusiastic about the actual topics, right? Chemistry. The things that are like more analytical, like physics, math, I really enjoyed. But the things that were more related to nutrition didn't interest me as much.
Okay.
So it built slowly, and I was like, yeah, I don't think this is going to work out. Like the nutrition thing, this isn't like I'm not enjoying this enough to do this for a living.
Right.
So I was thinking what I want to do. And then I thought maybe I'll be like a dog trainer. And I was thinking about various other things. And then one of my friends said, listen, you really enjoy like physics, stuff like that. Maybe you'll enjoy doing computer science. And then I remembered that in school, I did in Israel, it's called like a bagrut. So it's like a specialized classes in computer science.
Okay.
I opened my graduation card from school, and it's literally like all the grades, 50, 60, 70, maybe. But computer science is like 97. Like that's the only thing.
Something was an outlier here.
It's like very obvious. Yeah. It's like one thing that I've been, and I couldn't even remember like anything. I didn't even remember what I studied at the time. Like I needed to ask my dad. He was like, yeah, you studied Pascal in school.
That's interesting. So it's almost like you kind of cruised through it, and you didn't even feel like it wasn't even enough of an interest that you remembered the language you were using. It was kind of like, I just got to get this thing done, whatever I'm doing this class, and apparently I'm killing it and whatever.
Right. It wasn't like what am I going to study? I enjoyed computer science in high school, then maybe that's what I'll choose. Right. It wasn't. Anyway, so I was like, I thought about it more and more, and I was like, yeah, I think that's a good direction. So I just stayed at the college that I was studying at in the north of Israel, middle of nowhere, and they have computer science. I was like, yeah, I'll just switch to computer science over there. I signed up, and like literally the first day, I was like, holy shit.
And you just knew,
yeah, really. It was just like putting on a glove. Like I knew exactly like this is where I need to be.
That's cool.
And ever since, like I'm hooked. So like starting from the first year, then I just spent all my free time learning, teaching, learning. Yeah.
Right. And then you realize I am a nerd. Like, yeah, that's just how it is.
Yeah, like I started the degree, I had like a mohawk,
Yeah.
and I was like, I looked so cool. By the end of the degree, I was like a full nerd. Yeah. No, but it's
That's
true because like my interests, like my purpose changed. Like
right.
suddenly I was like, this is what I want to do.
That's
Right.
that's super cool though that like you because I actually feel like a lot of people don't experience that kind of thing in life. And I don't know, I don't mean for that to be like too like meta or philosophical, but it's like people will say like they go through say high school and they're I'm going to go in this direction and they go to school for it and they're like whatever, and then they go to get a job and it's hard to get a job and they're kind of just like it's almost like they're just kind of putting through to here's the steps I think I'm supposed to take. And I feel like maybe they go a lot of their career and they're like I'm 10 years into it now and like it's just the thing I know. But this is like for you, it's like you tried this thing out and it wasn't like a sure, I guess I can do this. It was like a hell yeah, like this is the thing. And I don't
Yeah.
think a lot of people get that.
Unfortunately, I think that's very true. Like, I think I was very lucky. I almost became like training dogs. You know what I mean?
Which is
It was
like
very
it's
close.
extremely different. Like yeah, that's yeah,
Like I
incredible.
went from literally knowing nothing, to investing several good hours every single day, including weekends, just like learning and learning. And yeah, unfortunately, I think like it's not. I think there are people that are like waiting to find their thing that they really want to learn,
Yeah,
and I think it also has to do with like personality traits. So like I
sure.
have a very like addictive personality. So like I find something and I like it, and when I
Yeah.
like it, I like it. You know,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's not true for everyone, unfortunately. For the
I'm a
for better or for worse, actually.
Sure, and I'm actually very similar. Like if like my the number of things I'm interested in is probably pretty narrow, but like for all of them, I'm like I'm going in. Like I love the gym, so like I got into bodybuilding. I've been doing
Hmm.
bodybuilding for like going to the gym for like 20 years, but bodybuilding more seriously
Whoa.
for a large portion of it because it wasn't just I'm gonna go casually to do it. It's like no,
Hmm.
like I'm here, like I gotta go all the way and take this thing really seriously. Cars, it was like I like cars, so I'm gonna get into modified cars and like terrible idea, but
Yeah.
these different things, there's not many of them, but I am very
Hmm.
interested in them, so I feel very similar when or it's very relatable to me. But I wanted to mention like it's probably for folks that are listening or watching, the I think an important point is that it's really valuable to be able to kind of if you're not loving the thing you're doing to be able to kind of step back, and it's okay to try different things. And if you're like hey, maybe computer science or software engineering, like developing things like that seems interesting, and like I'm not smart enough for that or what, like you're kind of talking yourself out of it. Like unless you try it, you're never that could be the thing for you where you're
Hmm.
like I tried it and you're like holy crap, this is so cool, but you won't know unless you try it.
Plus, it's not like this is perfect for me. This is what I'm gonna do. Sometimes it is, but many times,
Sure.
like, not in the end, you need to invest a lot of time of trying to understand things. And many times, I try to understand topics and I get completely lost.
Mhm.
And I think it's just part of it. Just like
Yeah, I think
banging your
people
head on the
are
wall until you get it. Yeah.
yeah, people are always looking for shortcuts for things, right? And I think and I get it, like we're human. Like if especially if you're talking with someone who has had success with something, you go, "Hey, like give me the shortcut. I want to do that too." And what they don't realize is that to get to a certain point, it took a lot of troubleshooting and stumbling and fumbling and being like this doesn't make sense,
Hmm.
going a week not knowing a concept and then having this moment where you're like like there it is, like now it makes sense. But it's
Hmm.
not like you can't just turn to someone and say hey take this shortcut and like for every step and you just get it. It doesn't really work that way.
Right, right. 100%. It's like specifically with programming, no matter who it is, like you gotta just spend a ton of time with your fingers,
Yeah.
like practicing it. Unless you write a ton of code, then the theory is worthless, honestly.
Before we move on, this is just a quick reminder that I do have a course on C# refactoring available on DomeTrain. Refactoring is one of the most critical skills that you can learn as a software engineer, and this helps you continue to build upon applications that already exist, making sure that they can scale and have extensibility. I walk you through a bunch of various techniques and give you some examples that we walk through together to see how we can apply these techniques to refactor the code. Check out the pinned comment and the links in the description to get this course. Now back to the video. Yeah, and we see this time and time again where you might have people that can understand the theoretical concepts, and I think this is, I'm using very general statements here, but especially in just like computer science, like, yeah, you're getting a lot of theory behind why mathematical proofs prove something in computer science, and it's like, okay, now go build this system, and it's like, well,
Mhm.
I know I need this data structure, I know that this would be an optimal thing, and it's like, okay, yeah, go build it.
Mhm. Right,
And
right.
and people seem to struggle like when they have to actually go put things together. So yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would recommend, like, if someone's watching this and they're like in their degree of computer science, then I would 100% recommend, when you're working in pairs and one of you needs to be writing the code, then
Mhm.
like using your fingers is priceless. Debugging it yourself and trying to understand what went wrong. Like today, I would actually recommend to like turn off Copilot in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code and try to type it yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, I would use like AI, like ChatGPT or Claude. I'm not sure how to say it correctly.
Oh, Claude. Yeah, yeah, I think it's
Claude.
Claude. Yeah.
I just call her Claudia. So I call her Claudia. So I would recommend talking to them nonstop and to like refine your understanding,
Yeah.
but just like typing it yourself. Otherwise, it like you need it like written in your mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, this is like an interesting concept, right? Like, we're in this age of, well, I think for us, right, we've spent a lot of time writing software, and I think for people that are getting into it, it's a really cool time because you do have all these AI tools to be able to help. And I've chatted with a couple of people about this before, but it's a good point that we were just talking about. Hey, you need, time actually typing these things, navigating, debugging, and when you're suddenly able to, get even like autocomplete, like basically
Hmm.
writing programs for you, the like, yes, you might get code that maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but you get code faster. But the challenge is like, for us at least, we had to go spend this time building things to learn it. And for people that are getting into it, you might have things that are getting built, but if you're not understanding what's there, it's going to be really difficult. Like, you're not getting the same learning opportunity.
Hmm.
And I wonder if like you start to notice, hey, I can make code faster, but like there's this like taper off effect where your understanding is like limited because of that, and then as a result you're unable to build more complex things. I don't know.
It's a philosophical question. Really, it is, because on one hand, the only thing that's important in the end is that you have products and features and things that work that people can use.
Yeah,
On the other hand, and like in the I don't know, individual level, then I do think that the more you use autocomplete, the less you remember how
sure.
to write it yourself. And I think
Yeah,
that does have an effect on the more complex things. Like when you're trying to be in the zone and like really think about a hard problem and solve it. It's a philosophical question. I honestly don't know what the right
yeah.
thing to do.
I'm very curious, and it's so easy to kind of sit here as someone who has not had all these AI tools for the majority of my career,
Mhm,
and be like, oh no, like you absolutely have to go understand these things more in depth. And then I start to think, and I'm like, okay, well, there was like this generation before me, and they would say, look, you have to start with like, you know make sure you understand C, like assembly, how these things
mhm,
work. I went to university for computer engineering, so at the time, the courses were telling us how things move in and out of registers.
mhm,
So, like, today, I don't really recall a lot of it, but the point was that they wanted to make sure that you understood these very
mhm.
fundamental building blocks. And I wonder, like, am I now being biased in the same way where I'm not telling people how, hey, start with C and registers and
Right.
how things move on to a stack, but I'm like,
Mhm.
if you don't understand how these basic things work, you're not going to get it. Is it the same problem? And they
It's a
truly
really
could
good
just lean
question.
into AI?
Right. It's a really good question. Honestly, it's a really good, because there are people that say, I used to use a punch card to code. And the fact that you're just using your computer, like if
Yeah.
you would use the punch card, you would really understand and feel it and have like a deep understanding of how the memory works, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I disagree.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think
So
there's added value in like the manual labor, you know?
yeah, exactly. So at what point is there like diminishing returns for people, or are the
Mhm.
tools becoming so advanced where like they just genuinely don't need that? It's kind of a weird spot.
Listen, during the degree, then what I used to do is I would use the Kate editor. I don't know if you know Kate.
I don't know.
It's just this really like lousy editor where it's like
Okay.
Notepad more or less. We
Okay.
just have syntax highlighting, like that's it.
Okay.
And I would need to use the terminal every time to compile the code. I was coding in C, C++, and I would need to use the command line to see
Sure.
the errors. And the fact that I wasn't using an IDE, then I had to like really remember the methods, the syntax, like specifically in C++, there's like the craziest syntax for some stuff. So you're working with pointers and you need to remember what things look like. And the fact that I didn't use an IDE, I became really good at remembering like all the methods, the syntax, how to do like the very low level things. You would give me a pen and paper and I would know how to write the code because I wasn't using. But there's no way in hell that I'm writing like that today.
Yeah,
and
like
I won't remember as much. And who cares? You know what I mean? So,
yeah, it's
like, am I happy I did it? I'm happy I did it, and I think it did improve maybe some
sure.
of like my spidey sense for like catching errors and stuff. But do you actually need it? I don't know. I don't know. It's
Was
a
it
good question.
diminishing returns? Like if you were to go repeat it, like is it like, hey, that helped and it helped optimize and gave you like the extra 5%, but for the amount of time that went into it, like, yeah, was it worth it? I don't know.
Honestly, I didn't have kids. I could have done whatever I wanted. Was it a waste of time? Of course it was. Everything I did was a waste of time at the
Sure,
time.
like
You know? Like
yeah. No,
I had the time, so
it's fascinating though. So I wanted to give you a quick example. I have a friend, he's a high school, one of my high school best friend's younger brothers, and he's become a close friend. And when I started trying to make educational content for YouTube and stuff, he reached out and said, "Hey, like I noticed you were doing this. Do you need any help with like video editing and stuff?" So he's actually been someone from the very beginning who tried to help. I don't even know if he had experience with it, but he was like, "This seems cool. I want to see if I can help you," which is super awesome. And I remember him saying, like, we're talking about stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, like this programming thing." He's like, "I have no, like, I can't program anything." Like, he's really good with Excel. And I think for him, he was like, I want to see if I can make Excel videos and stuff. And I was like, yeah, like, why not? If you're good at it, like, share the information. But he would always say, I suck at programming. I can't do this. Like, I'll never understand that. And then he would show me that he was using like low/no code solutions to go like link different systems together. And he was showing me like a real estate website that he built where it was pulling data from stuff. And he's like, yeah, but I can't code anything. And I'm like, like you seem to have something that is telling me you can put things together. Now he's building, still to this day, he will say, I can't program. He is literally using AI tools to build a lot of like a financial dashboard. And like, he's going to Chat GPT and typing these things, and he's shown me what he can build in like a day. And I'm going, I can't even do that. Like if I wasn't using AI tools, I can't do that.
It's such a interesting time that we're at. It's really a hard question. Like I think like today I'm limited on time mostly. So I have 2 kids, I have a wife, I have a lot of things to do like all the time.
Yeah.
When I have time to work, I need every second to count. Otherwise, I'd rather be with my kids, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So today, I'm looking for every single shortcut I can. I'll talk to Claude or Claudia. It's hours a day, just learning, because that's the quickest way to learn today for me personally. I'll use Vim. I'll use keyboard shortcuts. I'll use window managers. I'll use every single program that could make my life faster. But And for example, I wouldn't even consider working without like an IDE or an editor that tells me suggestions, etc.
Right.
But I feel like I need to think what will happen in the long run. So for example, I don't use Copilot in VS Code anymore because I felt like in the long run, it was not only hurting like how fast I can code, because I kept typing like a few characters and waiting, and I got like this fatigue where I wasn't concentrating as hard anymore, but like in a bad way.
Okay.
So like in the long run, that's not worth it. So I won't go back to that. But like, I think if I had the time, then I would invest in things that would make just like the craft of like engineering, like the craft of like knowing what you're doing. I would invest in the time if I had the time. But like the less time I have, the more I have to focus on what actually gets shit done.
Yeah. You said it earlier though, right? Like at the end of the day, it's all about the result being completed. Like as much as it sounds like a shortcut, or it's like kind of like a shallow approach, it's like, but that truly is what matters.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're
Right.
thinking about building software for clients, like people aren't going to like this, but like the customers
Mm-hmm.
don't care about the unit test, they don't care about the architecture, they don't care what language it's in. They literally want their problem solved, and
Mm-hmm.
ideally to pay as little as possible for it and to have it as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
100%. Plus, I get like a ton of comments of, for example, like these aren't best practices, or this doesn't follow clean architecture or domain-driven design. I used exceptions for flow control in one of my previous videos, and people were like, no, you shouldn't use exceptions ever for flow control. Only use the result pattern.
Right.
And the truth is, like, I used to have very, very strong opinions on each one of these topics. And today, first of all, I honestly don't care, because there are just more important things in life. Like if it works and everyone's happy, then there is no like absolute right and wrong. There are benefits and drawbacks, and in the long run, what will happen if it scales, if it doesn't scale. But also, like, it depends on the project, on the environment, who are the people working in the team, how much experience do they have. There's like so many factors that, like, I see it as like I can present to you 1,000 tools.
Right.
It doesn't matter what I present in the end. Like, you need to take everything with a grain of salt. Think about your actual problem, what you're trying to solve, what is your timeline, etc., and like apply the right tool. Because there is no, like, saying you should never use exceptions for flow control is wrong if you don't have the time to invest in the infrastructure needed, or if your project won't scale and you'll rewrite it in like 3 weeks. Like, who cares?
Yeah, it's this idea of context, right? You probably know who Derek Comartin is, Code Opinion.
Yeah.
He makes a lot of YouTube videos. Like, one of the things I love about how Derek presents concepts is that, like, he'll take anything and he might have an opinion for himself where he's like, I like this. And I think all of us have opinions about the things we like to lean into, but he does such a good job explaining, like, he could take anything and tell you pros and cons about it, and will say, it's all about the context. So the example you just gave where it's like, yeah, okay, never use exceptions for flow control. I think most of us would say, yeah, like, that's not a practice you should be doing. But to say like never, I'm about to say it, I never like using the word always and never. That's kind of meta. But the reason I don't like saying that is because you can always find an exception, no pun intended, to that rule. So your point of saying, hey, what about your time constraints, or if you like, you don't even have the result pattern in your code, or you might have to throw away this code, like, just do the thing that works. I think if you understand what these trade-offs are, then you can make informed decisions.
Right.
And
I think it's all about making the informed decision, right, based on your context, right? I agree.
Yeah, so that it makes it kind of dangerous for creating content, and like, see this a lot in like LinkedIn posts and stuff. LinkedIn's, I know we both know Nick Chapsis, and we know that we get a lot of LinkedIn posts get a lot of flack, but it's like you see these pieces of information that get put on the internet that say, like, this is the way to do it. One of the worst offenders, in my opinion, is when people say this is clean. They'll say this way of coding is clean, and then if you read in the comments, you'll have people being like, I don't think that's more readable. I don't think that's more clean. And it's like, yeah, it's because it's entirely subjective.
So, I 100% agree. Yeah. Plus, in the end, like if it works for you, because I think like if I worked on multiple projects where the using exceptions for flow control
Yeah,
went horribly wrong, I'll be very opposed to it, which is what happened to me.
absolutely.
Like at Microsoft, like hundreds of developers, I'll talk about like really, really large projects that used exceptions for flow control. And like it would be so tough understanding the airflow because you throw some exception and then you have a catch clause where you're catching the parent type of that exception type and then you wrap it with another type, and it was just crazy, like
Yeah,
entire
we got to check the
bundles.
inner exception, and like, no, we didn't match. We missed one of the exceptions in this block, and now it's not being caught. Yeah,
And you log it in multiple places and it's just a mess. And
yeah,
I understood no, exceptions is completely horrible until I saw projects that use it right. And my opinion started changing. And I think, like, in the end, even people who program for 20 years, they program on a very, very small subset of applications out there
sure.
in total. And that's their experience. And everyone's experience is valid. If someone does something and it works for them, who cares, you know?
Yeah, yeah, but this no, it's only one right way. It's only this is the way
Right.
to do it.
So when it comes to AI, it's like, if it works, you're using Claude or ChatGPT and it works,
Yeah,
you have code that works and it does what you need it to do. Does it really matter if you're coding in English using AI or if you're coding in Rust? I mean,
yeah, it's it works, right? So
right,
that's
right.
a
I'm not jealous with of people starting to code today. It's like the competition is hard.
yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. That's you definitely see it a lot, and yeah, a lot of people that are getting into it, hearing from them, it feels disheartening, right? Because it's like you know that these people have to put in a lot of time and effort to build up their skills and stuff, and the competition's fierce, and there's AI tools that are kind of moving the bar to a different point where people that maybe like the example I gave with my friend that's able to actually create things now. Um, that might be a ridiculous situation for him where if he were to go for a job interview, he might have a portfolio at some point in time where he's like, look at all these awesome things I built.
Mhm.
And then he goes to sit down for an interview and they're like, okay, now go do this leet code problem. And he's like, I have no idea what you even mean here, but I built these like very successful applications
Mhm.
and systems. Like it's a very different set of things to be focusing on. It's wild.
Yeah, it's great. Plus AI is going faster. Like if you started learning now, AI is likely learning faster, improving faster than you can improve. So
Right.
even if you spend the time and you spend now 10 years and you become an extremely professional software engineer, AI is going to be way ahead of you.
Right. But so then it's to me it seems like it's in your best interest to be leveraging AI tools as much as
Right.
possible as you're going forward so that it's not AI replacing you, it's you becoming more effective and more
Hmm.
effective using the AI tools. So
Right. Do you use AI like
I
in,
do well,
and if
okay,
yes, where?
yeah, okay. So at work, no. And sorry, I don't code at work, so that's why. So AI tools at work, and I'm at Microsoft, so there's a lot of AI stuff going on. So we use AI tools at work for like summarization, things like that. And we all have all of our own internal tools. For folks that are listening, watching, I would just say like, if you're using ChatGPT, like you want to be very conscious that you're not taking like work things and putting them into
Hmm.
external systems. This is something that doesn't even apply to just AI tools because everyone's like, oh, they're stealing our information. I'm like, forget the AI stealing your information talk. If you're putting stuff that's proprietary into external systems, you want to be talking with your IT people about what's okay there. So that's my disclaimer. So work, I'm kind of covered that way. I don't have to worry. My own personal projects, though, I use AI heavily, and there are there are things that I'm finding that I love using AI for, and the couple of them, they're things that like I know how to do, but I'm like I hate doing it. So, for example, regular
Hmm.
expressions. If I have to use a
Hmm.
regular expression, I hate making regular expressions. But what I found is like ChatGPT is good at least in my scenarios, has been regular expressions. So I'll say, hey, ChatGPT, like here's a list of things. I need this style of thing to be matched. Here's a couple of examples. And I found it does an incredibly good job of writing regular expressions. Are they optimized? I have no idea. Do they work?
Right.
Yeah, they're working. SQL's another one where like I always tell people, like, unfortunately, I don't like using Entity Framework Core, not because I think it's bad. I think it's probably one of the most amazing things ever built for .NET ecosystem. It doesn't line up with how my brain works. I need to be writing SQL, and I like need to create the database by hand and understand the tables, and I want to write my own queries. When I use an ORM like Entity Framework, it's almost like I feel like I'm fighting against it, even though I'm sure it can write way better SQL than me. So I'm not. When I say that, I'm just trying
Not
to make it
throwing
very
shade on EF. Yeah.
yeah. I would love to be very clear that I'm like it's a me problem. That's what it is. So I like using Dapper because I found that Dapper is exactly the mental model that I follow. Now, that means that I write a lot of SQL. I know how to write SQL. I'm not saying I'm the best SQL person in the world by any means, but I have found that like I am going to AI tools to say, hey, I have these tables. Like I've laid out the data how I think it makes sense. And now I have this complex operation. Hey, ChatGPT, here's the schemas. Here's what I want. And it works so well. One of the most recent examples I had was I had data sets in a table, and I said, I need you to basically compare these data sets within a table. They differentiate by one ID. So for this ID, go find the list, and the other one find the list, and then tell me the difference. For every record, I want to know if it's new, missing, or different. And it wrote a query like in 2 seconds, and it worked perfectly the first time. I know how to write the query. I don't want to do it.
Right.
So there's these
like
really
dirty
cool
work. Right.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff has been cool. I'll give you one more recent example. I was writing some code for for the details. I was writing some code for the YouTube API. I wanted to be able to check for videos, and the API itself does it in batches, so it has paging built in. So I think you can query up to 50 videos in a playlist at a time. Cool. So I have that in a loop, and it's able to kind of feed back results, no problem. And then I realized that API does not give you the duration of the video. And I'm like, shit, I need the duration as part of this thing I'm building. So I looked, and it's like, hey, there's another API you have to call. But instead of doing like 50, so one query and then fanning out to another 50 for each video, they said, hey, you can do it in bulk. So now I have two APIs I have to run sort of together to get a final result. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I built this streaming API with IA sync enumerable. Could I go refactor this code to basically bucketize the things and go call it? I'm like, I know conceptually how this would work. I don't want to sit here and rewrite this thing. So I just told ChatGPT, hey, look, I need you to go basically keep this streaming API, but effectively bucket this separate API call so that I can keep yielding back the results. And it worked perfectly the first time. But I think it worked because I could explain to it, like, here's the problem and here's what I need you to do.
Right. I think like the end, like what I do today is like I really like resonate with what you said. So if I know how to do the thing, and I know it's just like finger time, I know it'll take me like 30 minutes to code it or 3 hours to code it. 100%. I don't need to write it for the sake of writing it. I'll use AI to generate it. And maybe that's what's important today. I mean, like, for example, I use Obsidian. Do you know Obsidian? So I use Obsidian for like note taking and stuff. And there are various plugins that work with JavaScript. And I need to write various like either regular expressions or just basic JavaScript code, which I don't know too well. I'm not going to learn JavaScript for it. I just talk to ChatGPT, generate the correct statement. I'll try it. Doesn't work. I'll debug it, etc., etc.
Right.
Would it be better if I knew JavaScript? Like, yeah, but do I need to waste the time to learn it? I don't know. It's a really hard question. I think today what I actually do in practice is if I feel like if I feel like it's something that's worth investing the time, because like it'll be worth it down the line, then I'll invest the time in it.
Right.
But if not, or it's not like improving my understanding of a topic, I've already coded it like 1,000 times,
Right.
I'll just get the job done.
Well, and it seems like you're probably in a position where you can uh, make a pretty good informed decision about that, right? I think maybe for someone who's very new, they might not know if it's effective. Like they can't do that pros and cons analysis to say, hey, should I be learning this more in depth versus like
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT spat it out in a second, I'm just going to take it. Like that balance of to dive deeper versus take the shortcut, they might not be able to make a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for you, I'm not saying because we're human, maybe you're not making the best decision all the time, but at least it's
Probably
informed to
not.
say, it's at least informed to say, like, I don't think that me spending a lot of time perfecting my JavaScript knowledge is important. Let me get ChatGPT to spit it out. Can I read and rationalize this JavaScript? Sure. Like it's not like it's written in a different you know uh I want to say language, but I meant like
Right.
it's obviously a different language. I meant like a different character
Like
set. Like it's
readable, like yeah, like pseudocode, whatever. It's it's as long as it's readable.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then like is that good enough for you to get the job done? Sure. And did you save time?
Mhm.
Sure. Okay. Maybe you do that for 2 years and you go, holy crap, this is a bad idea because I have all this JavaScript code and I can't navigate it. But I have a
Right.
feeling it's probably not going to be the case because you could just take the JavaScript that's not working perfectly, and if there
And
were some weird nuances to it,
mhm.
you would just ask the LLM to go fix it. Like,
Do you think 5 years from today, like an honest question, do you think five
sure.
years from today, AI can do the job that you're doing currently at Microsoft?
So the reason I want to say no is just because I think the job I'm doing at Microsoft, like I heavily lean into the people side of engineering management.
Mhm.
On the other pieces, perhaps.
Right, like the
So
technical things. Like if you have boards of like Azure DevOps and whatnot.
yeah, yeah. Like if I could, I feel like if we were in a position where we could tell the LLM priorities or even ask it like, hey, here's trends we see based on data and help us decide the priority. Like I think totally, whether it's 5 years or not, I'm not great at
Mhm.
predicting the future, but I think at some point in the future that's not too far, there's going to be these opportunities where as long as we can feed data into the
Mhm.
LLMs, like whether it's RAG or something else that comes up where we can say, here's all these signals, here's all these metrics, these data points, um, and give it a little bit of guidance. Like here's the thing that where I don't know how we're going to bridge the gap, and I know that there's like agents and stuff that you can put together to talk to each other. Is like a lot of it right now is we need to be able to ask good questions. Like we need to
Mhm.
give it enough context and data sources, but without a good prompt or a good question to give it, it's like that can really determine the effectiveness of what's going to happen next. So I think as long as we can clean up that part and make that more straightforward, there's lots of things that I do in my job around priorities, around couldn't okay, we're terrible at predicting things as software engineers, right? Like estimates are the bane of our existence, but could we do better forecasting models if someone literally just told the LLM, here's all this historical data,
Mhm.
I'm not going to go sit here and figure it out, and it could even say like based on these types of ADO items that are coming up or Jira items, whatever you're using, like we've seen historically it takes
Mhm.
3 weeks to do this. Like you can't argue with the fact that that's the data and
Mhm.
that's our prediction.
Likely it's right. It's probably a good prediction.
Yeah. So like I think a lot of my current job, there's pieces that absolutely could be rolled out, but the on the people side of things, uh that might be one of the parts where I'm like, unless people feel like they can kind of do that rubber duck process, like programming
Mhm.
with an LLM, but for their people problems, like, hey, like
Mhm.
I'm having some challenges navigating this at work, or hey, am I on I don't know how to talk to my boss about this kind of stuff. Like, what do you
Mhm.
suggest, Mr. ChatGPT? Like maybe those pieces people can get a lot more out of them. So yeah, on the coding side, like I don't code at work, but the stuff I do outside of work, um, yeah, I feel like I'm actually very hopeful I can be in a position where I sit back and I say, I need this system built. Go connect these pieces and recommend the
Hmm.
best technology for this based on these constraints.
Hmm.
Or tell me the constraints I should be concerned about. Like, I'm hoping that I can
Right.
be in that position.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I think we were cooked. Like, I think 5 years from today, then yes, like considering that that like will continue in this in the velocity that we're at,
Sure.
then yeah, like I think I'll be able to say this is what I want to be done, and
Right.
have it continue asking me more and more questions about things that maybe I didn't explain well until it has a good mental model of what I want.
Right. But
And
that's a key point there, right? And I think that right now, I don't think that LLMs are good at asking you back about missing pieces.
mhm,
So when people are talking about individuals today up and coming, like I think I've heard people that have no programming experience, and I'm not trying to crap on them at all, but they have no programming experience, and they say software engineers are screwed. Like AI is taking your jobs, and I go, look, the difference is that I have like whatever 20 years of programming, 12 years of building software professionally. I have insights to be able to prompt the LLMs effectively, to be able to say, here's things I'm thinking of. If the LLMs can get better at asking us back, like, have you
mhm,
thought about this, or tell me about these constraints that are important?
mhm,
I think that's a missing link where new software developers, they would benefit from truly building systems on
mhm,
their own and understanding these things to ask the LLM. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
mhm.
off, but I wanted
No, no,
to
you
bring up
didn't.
that point.
And what's a good trick that I found actually for that is when talking to ChatGPT, because it has like web search capabilities,
Right.
many times it's sort of gaslighting, but I'll tell it, are you sure that's correct? You should do a few searches online
Sure.
and
And then
revise your answer.
do you find that
And
it does a good job of improving itself though?
so I tell it sometimes like do multiple searches, or I say use this and that keyword, whatever, just
Okay.
to like guide it to a specific direction.
Yeah.
And either it comes back apologetic, or it comes back like listen, I know I'm saying the right answer. And there's something about that is like I can trust the answer more after I ask it to verify itself.
Right.
And many times I'll also tell it like look back at our conversation, like remember the entire context, answer like remember whatever the specification ABC that I gave you beforehand,
Mhm.
and keep that in mind when answering. Or I'll tell it, continue asking me questions until you feel like you understand well, like what I'm actually aiming towards. Right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a really good point about like you can tell it, hey, look, like obviously it's an LLM, it doesn't actually have confidence, but like basically ask me until you're confident, and then it I guess needs to rationalize somehow that what are the key things that someone doing this would need to know, and
Hmm.
has that information been provided. So uh, a weird trick that I've never tried this myself, but a weird trick I've heard people say is like you can basically like bribe chat gpt, or like you can give it a monetary incentive.
Like
So you
what?
can say like what's a good example, like you basically tell it like you're going to be paid $500 to do this, and it
Mm.
almost like changes how it's rationalizing about
Hmm.
things to be able to be incentivized to do other things now.
Hmm.
So it's almost like giving it a priority.
Hmm.
I don't know
Like
if I'm
answer
explaining that
as
well.
if you're an executive.
So on the persona part, yes, and then you can even say like I'm trying to think of a good example. You're a copywriter, and I'm going to incentivize you, like you're going to make $500 more if you can focus on
Mm.
X. And just by incentivizing it to do
Hmm.
something with more focus, then it's like, okay. And obviously the ridiculous part here is like it literally is not like it's not a human. It's not someone going, oh
Right.
crap, someone's going to pay me $500 more. But it seems like it picks up on the fact like, oh, that is an incentivization. I
Hmm.
understand that this is a priority. So I
Hmm.
will go do that thing with priority. So it's a really weird tactic to like
Right,
to
right,
leverage.
right.
But
Like I imagine it as if I'm just like building like the context window for it to
right,
append things that will make more sense with the previous context. So
right,
I'll add to context, like for example, you are the best at design patterns.
yeah.
And then I'll ask it a few questions. And I just imagine it as if I don't know if it actually works, right? But I imagine it as if it's like it'll push the model to answer answers that are more accurate. I don't know if it actually works, but
Yeah, and again, I don't know, but this is what I've heard. Where, like, again, the more context, the more about the persona that you can provide for how you want to answer is supposed to shift, dramatically the effectiveness and how it answers. And I don't know how that works, right? Because the very interesting part is like where it breaks down for me personally is the corpus of data that it knows. So when we talk about these models, they've been trained on data, but there's a difference. The way that this is explained to me is like that training is like giving it skills, and it's not so much about like factual knowledge that it can go look up. So
Mhm.
that's like why a lot of the time if you ask it things and people can say, hey, look, like, see, it was wrong about this fact, it's
Mhm.
like,
Right,
yeah,
right.
because it's basically taking skills and inferring a fact. Whereas if you gave it a body of knowledge specifically, you can say it's trained on all these skills, and with this body of knowledge now, go make inferences about it. So it's really weird, and I don't understand fully like the best. I'm not a prompt engineer. Like, I have a long
Right.
long way to go on that kind of stuff.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, it's just seeing what works. Like
Yeah.
many times I'll be like, crap, I went down a bad route with
Yeah.
this
Back
conversation.
up out of
It's
it.
becoming dumber as I continue this conversation. I rewind, I go back and I try something else.
Yeah, I've definitely had like I mentioned the SQL thing. There have been times where I try a query and it doesn't work, and I have to tell it like, "Hey, this is wrong. Here's the
Hmm.
error I'm getting," and it's like, "No problem." And then it writes the query the same way, and I'm like, "Uh oh!" Like, I need to go back because clearly I'm not
Hmm.
prompting it in a way that's moving things forward. So
Hmm.
long,
Oh,
long way to go on
something.
that.
Listen, another trick that I really like doing is, let's say I want to ask it a question about a specific topic.
Sure.
I'll first have it like expand about that topic in general, and
Mm,
then ask it questions where it like has a wider context on those things. Does that make sense? So, for
yeah.
example, I'll say, I don't know, if it gets like I want to create a mermaid class diagram. You know, mermaid.
Yep.
I want to create, let's say, a mermaid class diagram. I'll tell it to create a mermaid class diagram, whatever. And let's say it gets the syntax wrong. I'll go back. I'll say like, explain to me the basics of mermaid diagrams. It'll
Okay.
explain it, and then I'll ask it to generate it again. And then with the context of how to write a mermaid diagram correctly, it'll get it right or
Interesting.
something like
It's
that.
almost like it put into the conversation history, like it put in some basic details about it, and
Right,
then
right,
move
right, right.
forward with the context it provided itself.
Right, right. So sometimes let's say I want to ask it about versioning ASP.NET applications, just
Sure.
because I worked up on this today. So I want to talk about versioning. So I'll have it expand generally on versioning. What are the benefits, the drawbacks, approaches, different languages, how they do it, blah, blah, blah. Then I have a bulk of context. And then I'll start asking it the actual questions, like warming it up, you know?
Interesting. Yeah, so instead of
Mm.
assuming, like, in our heads we might go, "Hey, it already if I'm going to ask it that, it already knew the answer. So let me skip ahead." Instead, it's like you lay it out more
Mhm.
gradually to build up like force it to build the context even for itself, and it seems to perform better is your experience.
Right. There's the paper of sparks of AGI, I think it was something like that,
Okay.
where they saw like sparks of AGI when the models were reviewing their questions and then answering. So, for example, how many L's does this sentence have? And then we get it wrong. And
Mhm.
then it would be told to take a look again at its answer and answer again. And then it would say where it went wrong, and then it would answer correctly or something like that. So I try as much as possible when I feel like it's going off course to have the model look back at the conversation, at the context, review its own answer, and then answer with the context of its previous answer.
That's interesting. Okay.
Sometimes it works. Yeah. Sometimes it fails miserably.
Yeah, I think we probably have a long way to go, and maybe for people that are getting into the industry now and leveraging AI tools, maybe that's one of the advantages they have over us, is that like it's becoming like that's going to be their first view into this world. And it's kind of, I'm thinking about like my niece and nephew, like they're, you know, my sister's pretty good at not just being like, hey, you're glued to your iPad, but they're starting on digital devices significantly earlier than
Hmm.
I did, right? And than my sister did. So I just wonder, and you have kids, right? So I wonder for kids that are, you know, coming through this digital age, like are they just going to be so much more advanced at some of these things just
Hmm.
because they started sooner? So in different
Honestly, I would
context.
tell my kids when, not now because they're like 3, right?
Sure.
But not now, but like when they're, I don't know, 12 and learning how to program or whatever, I would tell them this is like your genius tutor. Like you have your tutor that knows literally almost everything. They'll get like the niche things about topics it'll likely get wrong. So like things that I know pretty well, I'll see that it gets wrong all the time. But generally speaking, you have like a genius tutor. Just keep
Hmm.
asking questions. Don't waste your time like looking for like for example, I'm in DaVinci Resolve. I'm trying to find a specific effect that I'm trying to do or whatnot. It's like a waste of time going through the options. Just ask. Like you have a tutor. You have a like a
Yeah.
senior software engineer sitting by your side all the time. I would
Right.
definitely recommend to use it like nonstop.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, is that you give it. I even think about like searching things online, right? Like you have to say, here's, you have to find keywords, and then you're clicking through, diving deeper to come, like going
Hmm.
into something that's not the thing, coming back out, going into something, coming back out. Whereas with an LLM, we can say, you speak to it, like here's this
Right.
scenario, and then it's like it's pushing the information back to you. Now,
Hmm.
whether it's right or wrong, different story, but like it's a push model versus like you having to go, you know, try and pull the
Right.
information back out.
Do you still use Google Stack Overflow for questions or exclusively AI?
It's an interesting question, because I think there's something, and I don't know, like I want to give you a good answer, and I don't know if I figured out the pattern yet, but I have found more and more recently, um I am using LLMs more to answer things. Certainly, it's like
Hmm.
I still use Google Stack Overflow a ton. But I think it's because I haven't built up the like the muscle memory, or like the it's not like a, I don't know, it's not natural yet for me to go to ChatGPT for all sorts of things. Um,
Hmm.
but I have a feeling if I were better at prompting and saying, hey, go to the internet
Hmm.
and get data from it, I feel like if I could do that more effectively, I would probably stop using Google personally.
Right, 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 right.
So yeah, how about for yourself? Is it, have you basically shifted entirely to LLMs, or
I haven't used Bing. No, just kidding. I haven't used
okay?
Google for quite a while, like
I
at
meant to
all.
say Bing, by the way, not Google. Just
Of
as a
course
heads
not.
up.
Of course not. Of course not. We love you, Satya. So what I used to do is I would put the search terms,
Right.
and then I would, like a freaking maniac, I would open like 1,000 different tabs, and I would rush through them, just looking for like visually the answer that I'm looking for. Usually,
Mhm.
like just looking at the code snippets, looking at the first answer, Stack Overflow, or just sifting through GitHub issues, whatever.
Right.
And I would do that like a maniac, like tuck, 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 open, close, 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 close. I would have like a million tabs, and I don't do it anymore. Like it's been, I think it's been at least like a year
Wow.
where I don't think I've done it once since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Right, right. Yeah, it's wild actually.
It's a completely different way of working then, right? Like, and it's been more
Completely
optimal for you.
different.
Very
Right, right,
interesting.
right. Yeah.
Huh. Well, so Amichai, I wanted to be conscious of time, and we didn't get a chance yet to kind of go over some of the courses and stuff that you've been working on, and I wanted to make sure that we had some opportunity to at least let the audience know. Like, I'm sure they know who you are, and obviously I'll get links and stuff from you after to kind of share into the description and comments and stuff. But for folks that are watching and listening, like you do a lot of content creation. I've even seen like on Reddit and stuff where people are, you know, giving you shout outs and stuff because they're really appreciating how you're explaining things. And it's really cool to you know, to see your name coming up in a whole bunch of different places about the content you make. But for courses, the types of stuff that you're interested in sharing, you know, helping educate people on, like, can you maybe give us a little bit of background about what you have available and what you've been into?
Yeah. So first of all, I'll just put a disclaimer that like I'm very, very humbled that people like enjoy the content. And no, really, I'm really, really humbled that like people spend the time to look at this and it's like a way for them to learn. So like I just went to my room one day and started filming. You know, it's not like I met people and taught them. Like I was just sitting in my
Sure.
room and suddenly it's reaching people. And also that the videos are edited and I do a lot of research before the videos and also courses, etc. When I learn something for the first time, I struggle and I try again and again and again. And you're watching like the end product. So if it looks like I know everything, you can be 100% sure that if I want to write that code again, I might go back to my video, I'll watch it, I'll relearn it before I use it. Because in the end, I don't know all the content in that level all the time. It's just I need to refresh it. There's nothing special here, like honestly. Like anyone can do it. It's just a matter of like preparing enough for filming and like, yeah, like on specific contents. So with that disclaimer, I have 4 courses at the moment. I have 5 courses on Dome Train. I have Getting Started and Deep Dive on Clean Architecture and Domain-Driven Design. And I have a free course on the Singleton design pattern. And this is 1 out of 23 courses that will be available on Dome Train for like 0 to hero design patterns in C#, where basically for each one of the design patterns, then we talk about like the definition of the gang of 4, we build a class diagram, we write the code, we give a real world example.
Nice.
It's very fun. Like if you like computer science, things like algorithms, trees, you know, things like that, then it has the same like feeling of like just like patterns in software engineering. So I really, really enjoy that. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, it's cool. Like I think when you know, if you're passionate about the things that you're putting together, then like it comes through in the quality of it too. So that's cool to hear that if you're like, yeah, this is exciting, then I'm sure that the outcome of that's going to be very solid too. And yeah, so YouTube, what are you on other social media platforms if people wanted to reach out to you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm not terribly active today on social media.
Because you're busy making courses and videos, so
I'm busy with the kids.
The kids, yeah, yeah. I guess. Sorry, these are actually real priorities in life. So,
right.
We don't have kids yet. We have 3 dogs and 2. We've added 2 cats into our family.
Too.
So,
I have 3 dogs.
Okay, so oh, nice, awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, we don't have the kids. We added cats, and I think probably kids are in the future. But yeah, I think we're taking our small steps towards those with more animals. So
right, animals are the best. Honestly,
truly, yeah. It's nothing like coming home and having a bunch of fluffy animals come up and saying like, "Doesn't matter, you've been gone the whole day. We love you, and like we're here. Like, give us the attention." So
definitely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Amichai, I wanted to say thank you so much for this. I like coming into this, I didn't think that we were going to be, you know, diving in so much to the AI stuff, but I think it was really cool to hear your approaches for how you're becoming more effective with AI tools, you know, different kind of strategies, how you're leveraging it. It's insightful for me because it's one of those things like I'm not good at it, and it's really interesting to hear how you're getting effectiveness out of it, and maybe those are things I can apply. So it's cool.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and it keeps changing all the time. Like just the other week, I was blown away. I think it started like 3 weeks ago. Started using Claudia, as my AI, and I was blown away of how better she was compared to ChatGPT 4. It keeps changing all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it'll shift, right? And then ChatGPT will be better, and everyone will say, "Oh, look!" And then it'll shift to something else, and keep kind of bouncing around as all these things improve.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, thanks again. You know, I'm excited for your courses and stuff to come out, and I would love to talk to you again in the future. So I'll make sure that we're staying in touch, and we can catch up again.
Likewise, likewise. This was really fun. My very first podcast, or
Cool.
whatever you call this.
Yeah, I don't know. I struggle with the naming of it. I call them software engineering interviews, and then I realize
Mm,
maybe that's confusing for people because they think I'm going to go ask people like lead code problems and put them on a whiteboard or something. I don't know,
mhm.
but podcast, I guess, is probably more appropriate.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well,
thanks
thanks
for having
again.
me
We'll be in
and taking the
touch.
time. And whoever's watching this, just know that it's what, like 6 in the morning now?
Yeah, it's 6 in the morning now. Yeah.
And we've been doing this for an hour and a half. So
Yeah.
it's been a while. You woke up early on a Sunday. So
Yeah,
just a
that's okay.
huge shout out for waking up. Really.
No, yeah, no, it's awesome to be able to do this. So like I appreciate the opportunity and I'm happy to, you know, lose a little bit of sleep in the morning. I'll take a nap today. It's okay. So not a big deal.
For sure. Do it. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for
Cool.
taking the
Thanks
time.
again.